economic development is 15 years. And you guys, it's been such a great synergy. And we really have so much that we all work together, the companies, the lineage, the workforce. It's so great having these two counties work so well together. And I have so many people that we would like to acknowledge, but first and foremost, I think we need to make sure that we have a special acknowledgement to our healthcare system. And Kossuth Regional Healthcare System and Palo Alto County Hospital, along with the Walkers who are here, Dr. Walkers, chiropractic. Let's give them a hand. They've had keeping us well informed, caring for everyone, and they've had a tough job these last few months. So thank you very much. Also, our sponsors. Our sponsors, I'm going to have to say that when you look at our sponsorship, this pretty much doesn't ever change. This has been such a great support over the years, and we really appreciate it because they're the ones that help make this happen and provide us to get such quality speakers as we do. I also want to acknowledge our board of directors and our board of supervisors and our county auditors. They're very special, such a good connection with us. So all of my board of directors and board of supervisors, would you please stand, please? This year, we've had a lot of Zoom meetings. We've had a lot of going back and forth and special meetings, and when you have to have special meetings, we had to have them through Zoom. That was the only way that we could be doing it. And we found that it actually worked. And that, as you all know, you all had staff that had to work remotely, and we found that that's a new way of how we're going to be doing our business from this point on. So another thing that I would like to acknowledge is that we have some super committee members, and we have our city clerks who are near and dear to us. They are the connecting force for the communities at all times. And we had many training meetings through Zooms. They had issues that they needed to have responses to. They needed to have trainings throughout this time. And I would have to say those, and they are all women, those women were very much Johnny on the spot. And they are your really drivers in your communities. They help make things happen. They take a lot from the overall community, talking and dealing with things. And I really think that we need to give them a nice round of applause. I also have to acknowledge someone who's not here today, but he's certainly helped us through this whole COVID time period, and that was Dave Hinton. And Dave Hinton at that point in time was Kossuth Emergency Management. He's now left his position, but he absolutely, anything that we needed to have, training for our city clerks, training for the HRs, working on, okay, we have this issue, what do we do, Dave? Just a minute, let me get down to the state. Let me get you the information and the documentation that you need to have. And it was just within a few hours that we had it back. Then we could disseminate it right back up. So I really have to credit our emergency managements in any county throughout the state of Iowa was working completely overtime. I have another acknowledgement, and I've got a lot of acknowledgements, don't I? But this is kind of that year. I have another acknowledgement, and that's really to our lenders, our CPAs, our accountants. So when it came time for the PPPs, those people were heavy into hours trying to get applications so our businesses would be able to get the PPP loans and working very diligently. They were tirelessly working, not once, but twice. And so I think they too need to be very businesses alive and going. So let's give our lenders and accountants. One word, and that is, to all of our businesses, really kept their doors open. And they were our services that helped keep us being able to go in, get what we needed to do, and be able to keep functioning. And through that time where we had to be shut down, we had businesses that were completely open and did not have requirements for them to be shut down, but we want to thank them because they helped everything keep going and functioning. And so that took a lot of pressure and time on them also when some doors were actually being able to be closed and locked. So we want to thank them for this time period too. And I also want to stop and I want to acknowledge our staff. And where's my little Robin? Where'd she go? There she is. Robin, why are you hiding? So, Robin, you have to stand up. So, Linda and Robin, I want to thank you for being, and Tricia. Trisha's our new staff member. Trish, look forward to meet up and see you. These are our staff who are on the front lines in our office. Again, thank you. This year has been very unique. It has been at times very challenging. And I have to say, I have a great staff. So thank you. Tricia is very much on the ground. She's only been with us about 2 months. And she has really hit the ground running. So we're very excited about that. And I have 2 wonderful, wonderful interns. Where's Anna?
Right here.
Okay, Anna, stand up. Reese, stand up. So I have interns, just like some of the rest of you had started bringing back interns, and our intern program was going quite well, very efficient. And our 2 interns have been very busy and very active, especially these last few days. They've been great help for us to help make this happen. So thank you all, and I'm going to turn it over to Terry Rich.
Groups, and this has been one of the most organized, professional, and organized staffs that I've ever worked with. Thanks so much for being able to set everything up to be able to talk about success. I mean, you all have had a lot of success, and over my lifetime, I'm a Cooper, Iowa kid. I'm a 50 people, small town, Greene County, Iowa farm kid who got lucky in a lot of ways, and like you all, anytime you can hire a good rural employee, you know they're hardworking, they've got the great values. I started out in that little town, been a keynote speaker since I retired for 4 very unique organizations. Started out, went to Iowa State. Someone said I graduated with a BS in speech, so get set today. Bachelor of Science in Speech, which was really radio and TV, and started in cable television before cable television was cool. You all get this as you talk to businesses coming in. How do you start a new business? I mean, this pandemic creates all sorts of opportunities that for growth. In fact, most businesses are formed, more entrepreneurial businesses are formed during recessions and pandemics and all these sorts of things because we're forced to think outside the box, doing something different. Well, cable television was outside the box. I mean, ABC, CBS, NBC, they laughed at us, all the local stations. You know, who's going to pay $8 for cable television? Yeah, we're paying $120 today, right? So I started in cable television with a guy named Bill O'Reilly and Jim County, Jim Hoke, and they couldn't pay me much, but they paid me these things called stock options. Well, you know, things went well. And ultimately, at age 40, my dad always said, you know, work hard for someone, you work at that company the rest of your life. At 62, you can get your Social Security, you're going to be happy. Okay? Well, at age 40, they cashed us out. Somebody came in and tried to buy us, so we did a leverage buyout and cashed us out. And all of a sudden, I had everything I ever wanted. I could travel in the country and the world with this job. And I had paid out, and I realized that happiness doesn't happen when you reach a goal. Happiness happens on the way to success. If you're not happy today, you're not going to be happy tomorrow, right? So I decided to start my own companies. And, you know, That's kind of the dream everybody has. We like to hear new companies getting started. I started 4 different companies. I got lucky when I was 29, my major life break was pretty simple. I got a call from the farmer in Cooper, Iowa, and said, hey, right where I went through, we got 2 paragraphs in the Des Moines Register. Cooper, Iowa never had anything in the Des Moines Register. We made the Jefferson Daily Herald, you know, we never had a Des Moines Register. So he said, we decided we're going to have a centennial. We don't know whether 100 years, but they were unincorporated. We don't know whether 100 years, but we're going to go ahead and have a centennial anyway. And we want you to help. So we sat, we talked, and we brainstormed. Much like you're doing today, or you've done around the tables, of what could we do? We talked about all the different ideas, and all of a sudden he looked at me and said, well, you're a most famous person. You've been on radio and television. I thought, gosh, if I'm the most famous, we better adopt somebody. So we sat down and took that idea of adopting a celebrity just for one day. We thought the 50 residents of Cooper could all write their favorite celebrity and say, hey, we've never had anybody famous, so we'd like to see if you would come in just for one day. And I sat down at a typewriter. In those days, for the younger folks, we had these things called typewriters, and did a press release. I've never done a press release. Went to Jefferson because we didn't have copy machines or any of that sort of things. And I hit the button, but I hit too many. I hit 44. I just wanted 4 because I knew the Jefferson Daily Herald, KDLS, you know. Had 44 of them, and I stamped them, but I didn't have enough places to send, so I went to the library in Jefferson, looked up New York Times, LA, Miami, I don't care, London. I sent off 44, hoping somebody would give us just a little bit of press on having a centennial and that we were going to try to adopt a celebrity. 12 hours, almost to the minute, I get a call, 9 o'clock the next morning. Hello, Terry Rich, yeah, this is Bruce Canner. I'm with United Press International. We saw the press release, we liked the idea, I want to get a couple quotes and we'll stick it on the national wires. Who's UPI? That sounds like a disease or something. Half hour later to the second, I get a call. Terry Rich, yes, this is Jim McCulley. I'm a talent coordinator with The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. We got the press release, the local NBC affiliate gave it, put it on Johnny's desk, because you know he was born in Iowa. We want to do something with it. We're going into a meeting, but you got to guarantee, because all the reality shows are going to be calling you, that we can be first. We can be the first one to do it. Will you guarantee us that? Hell yes. What do you say to that, huh? So he said, okay, well, I'll give you a call back in a couple hours. I hung up the phone, picked it back up to call my farmer friend, and I couldn't get this thing, again, for you younger folks for me to understand, I couldn't get a dial tone. Couldn't get a dial tone. All of a sudden I hear this screaming, hey, this is Terry Rich. My name's Judy Steinberg with Good Morning America. We have 2 tickets to New York. We want you in New York tomorrow. Sorry, I just committed to the Tonight Show. You can't legally do that. She's screaming, yelling at me. Well, long story short, that little promotion, just because we tried something, that little promotion got us on the Tonight Show. They talked about actually broadcasting the entire show from Cooper, Iowa via satellite and doing the entire show. Later, he did one from New York, and that's where the idea came from. But they couldn't get everything arranged, so they sent 3 of us to LA. We got put up, tickets, all that sort of thing. We got the first 2 commercial breaks. We were on for 20 minutes. And lo and behold, it went off the roof, off the charts. We were in front of 20 million people talking about Little Cooper, Iowa. It was so successful that during the centennial, we had ABC, NBC, CBS, the Today Show, Good Morning America, all these national media came, and my number was 233,422, but the Des Moines Register reported 12,500 people showed up in Cooper, Iowa that day, along with all of that different media. But the day after, back to success, it was all over. Well, what do you do next once you get a little taste of that kind of success, right? But anyway, that shot my career way up, and as they talked about the satellite uplinks, once we cashed out at age 40, I decided, what do I do? And I had the opportunity to move to Denver area, but I love Iowa. And I decided to start my own company, Rich Heritage Incorporated. I took the Heritage name. And we did national free previews for HBO, where we would do the fun, hey, wow, they got HBO on today on basic cable. Somebody's messing with their cable, and then we'd come on during the break saying, now's the time to order HBO. Well, that satellite idea that we took, we sold $15 million worth of HBO the first week we did that. And that took off. So for 10 years, we did a lot of those. We started a couple other companies, had 4 companies in all. And then started a crazy show called Soccer Slam, which you may see a documentary on soon. They just did an article, they're reviving it, which is full contact indoor soccer. We rented the ice rink, put a turf down, and just think WWF only for soccer. We had a great time. It was on Fox Sports World. But there was so much fun and so much success, but I turned to age 50 and I thought, I'm gone all the time, I've got everything, I made my goals, what do I do now? And I got a call from Governor Bob Ray, who said, hey, we've decided to take over the zoo because the city of Des Moines can't handle it. It's going downhill. Would you be interested in running a zoo? Well, you're on a farm, I guess, raising a cow and you're raising a giraffe. I got it was really fun, 6 years, but it was all back to getting the ideas like you all are doing now. Remember, we're talking about getting ideas and exchanging ideas to do something new. Change is so important because you're going to gain a business today, you're going to lose a business tomorrow. And that's why it's so important that the economic development is always on top of the game and trying to find ways to bring it together. So I ran a zoo for you guys, pretty easy turnaround in the city as we did it. We basically cash flowed in about six months, and we did we started a thing called Zoo Brew. That was easy. We knew we had all the young kids, but how do you get 21-year-olds? Well, booze. So we figured young adults. So we shut the no kids at night, just adults, and served booze. We had a band, and unbelievable. Last year they sold $250,000 just in beer and Zoo Brew. So cash flowed and raised $15 million in endowment, and it'll go forever and ever, even through pandemics. They had the money to survive. So that was a really fun give back. And then I got a call from the governor who said, hey, would you be interested in lottery direct equipment? Would you be interested in going into that? And now I'm going to tell you about the biggest failure, the biggest success, one of the biggest successes I had in life. Now, we all know the success, and usually if you know someone who has been successful, you don't realize how many failures they had. And that's important to talk about. My first failure coming out of Iowa State was I was working with Bill Riley, and I was on TV and cable television, and I noticed that when I was on, I didn't have this 5 o'clock shadow, so I thought, I'm gonna write to Schick and tell him how much I love the Track 2 Razor. Maybe I'll get a national TV commercial. So I sat down with that same typewriter, wrote my little letter, said, hey, I'd love to do a TV commercial for you. And for 2 weeks, I did what all of you do when you play Powerball. I dreamt, what happens if I get a call and I get to go do national television? 2 weeks to the day, I got that letter back. And it said, dear Mr. Rich, expressing your complete satisfaction with the Schick Track 2 Razor, we regret to inform you we don't make that. Gillette makes it, and here's their address. I failed. And let me tell you, everybody who's successful in this room has failed once or twice. There's a big difference, though. Big difference. That excited me when I got excited those 2 weeks about being on national television, to find ways to do that. And I've been on all 4 networks. I've been on all the cable channels for various things. But we are going to fail. Think about your grandkids or your kids. First time, what happened when they're about 1.5 years? They pulled themselves over to the couch. Over on the east side of Iowa, they call it a Davenport. That's an Iowa joke. I just try to see who's from Iowa. Pull themselves up, take a step, what happens? Boom, they fail, right? Well, what do? If you're in business and you fail the first time, many people quit. They pull themselves back up, take 2 steps, boom, 3 steps, boom, until they're walking and running all over the place. It's so important. How many times have you had a good idea, it hasn't worked, and you just quit, ain't gonna work. But you didn't adjust, you didn't move it aside, you didn't do it. And that's part of the story I'm about to tell you. So failure is the first step to success. And it's better to have tried and failed than to succeed at doing nothing. Now that sounds like a government official. I tell that joke because I was a government official for 10 years. Better to have tried and failed than to succeed at doing nothing. You've got the $1 million idea in your minds and things that you can do to help the communities. And what I'm going to do today is not talk about the revenue side, but getting burnt on the expense side. It's a crazy, crazy story, and a fun story that we'll pull together. Let's talk about it. It's an $80 billion gamble. A true crime story that has been already featured on MSNBC, all sorts of different cable networks, New York Times. This story has been broadcast around the world. as the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history. And my goal, let me get the camera. My goal is to tell you that there's no worse feeling than to wake up in the morning and see what you would feel like if you wake up and see a story like this come on the national networks.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have the winning ticket. Conspiracy, fraud, corruption. It was the biggest scandal in lotto history.
Every time that we thought this case couldn't get any weirder, it did.
They turned $5 into $16.5 million.
This is now a nationwide investigation.
How did they do it?
I think all of us were just shocked.
We got a problem. Ding, ding, ding. Cover story: the notorious lottery heist, Sunday, only on Game Show Network.
An $80 billion gamble in town, a lotto ticket, 2 hot dogs, and we'll even add Bigfoot in the mix. Help solve the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history. Now, why should anyone care about lottery and gambling? You know, pretty much, I mean, Emmitsburg, you get Emmitsburg, everybody, it's a great financial benefit for the community, all the things. But most people say, yeah, I do it once in a while, but I don't do it a lot, right? Why should anyone care about the lottery? Well, in the years, I think it was 2017, the United States residents spent $11 billion at the box office. $10 billion on music, $56 billion on sporting events. You have to add that all together to get to the $80+ billion spent on lottery tickets. A huge number. And with the pandemic and the rebates or the send-outs, lottery added another 20% to their revenue this last year. People love to gamble. And lotteries are institutions that are run by states. Used to be they were run by organized crime. And so the state said, one, we can make some money. Two, we can control it so that if you're mad and you don't know whether it's rigged or not, you can go to the lottery director, or to the governor, or someone to talk about it. So it's an important business for states. They're all run by states, but $80 billion spent on lottery tickets. So if you're in charge of a state lottery and you think something's happening in your own state and you screw up the investigation or ruin the reputation of lotteries across America, which happened in the 1800s, they shut everything down when Louisiana had a problem with corruption and organized crime. You are gambling with other people's and good causes $80 billion. A leadership decision that could cost the reputation of our industry. And I'm telling you this story because I don't want you to go through what I went through. I'm telling you this story because you all are protecting the reputation of your counties, of your businesses, of your organizations. We hear a lot about external hacking. We're all worried about all the stuff in Russia trying to get into our computers and take our contacts and all that sort of thing. But internal fraud is equally important when you're trying to create and do it. Now, here's a character counts. I don't know if you all know Scott Racker. He's probably been up in his group with character counts. They did a survey, which I think is really kind of fun, with the people you're hiring right now. People that are in college or high school said that 76% had lied to a parent, 18% had stolen from a parent, 51% had cheated on a test, 14% stole from a friend. But of course, when they're interviewed and they're asked, what do you think about character? 99% said it's important to have good character, and 81% says, well, I'm better than most when it comes to doing the right things. Of course, it only takes one to mess things up if they're trying to steal from you internally, right? So these are the folks we're hiring who tell us how honest they are. And it isn't so much as they believe, we all believe that we are honest, it's that we're put in situations that could allow us to do it and then put us in a situation where we think about us doing that. You've heard all of them, some of the headlines. School business manager steals $249,000. I do a lot of school and state school organization on this subject because this really has been a big deal in school business because they just have one business manager, right? Usually in there, they're trying to keep their head count low. County comptroller sweeps 1.2 to a personal account. Secretary takes $28,000 from the church coffers, and it's usually the sister of the president of the church organization that did it was done. Nonprofit treasurer lifts $12,000. Internal checks and balances, we'll talk a little about, and the fraud key elements. And this is a good one to remember because most people think there's only one reason why people steal, because they're greedy and they need money. Now, we all need more money. And there's a single person in here that doesn't want more money. I don't care how much you make. If I gave you the check for $100 million, you could still say, well, how do I get to Bill Gates' level? You know? We all have a financial need. The financial need that cracks people that they want to do something is when they have a gambling problem, have an alcohol problem, they get divorced, kids go to college, credit card problems, something that trips up. And I've had so many really good employees that I've hired, but at some point in their life, everybody has some sort of financial crisis. The other is opportunity. This is probably, of all the things you should remember by the time we're done today, is trying to eliminate the hard opportunity. You saw the four things. Usually in a school district, usually in a county organization, you have someone who writes the checks and writes the purchase orders. You've got all the keys to the kingdom. You're right for fraud. Find people when you have that opportunity. So the key is separation, checks and balances. I'm going to tell you about the rule of two here in just a second. So that opportunity is combined. I mean, if you don't have a financial need, you know, we can even write a check on an organization. We have the opportunity, but if we don't have the financial need, you don't have the problem, right? The third one, though, is what really trips us, and this is the toughest to control, the toughest, in my mind, to kind of figure out, and that's the rationale. At what point someone has the keys to the kingdom, write the checks, write the POs together, have the financial need. At what point do you rationalize this? Well, they're not going to miss, you know, they don't appreciate me. I should be making more. Julie and the other organization is making more, or Jack over here is making more. I deserve this. That's the hardest one to do and to figure out. But if you have the opportunity to take it away where they are over, yeah, but if I do it, then that rationalization, if I do it, I know that we have someone checking to go up to, I have to give them a check to sign, we're in trouble. So that's what you're trying to break to kick out the fraud. And we'll talk a little bit about how to do that after you hear the story. Who finds fraud within an organization? This is really unique to me as a CEO. We had, you know, Rob Sand at the auditor's office, like, oh, they come in once a year, so if he gives me that, I know I don't have any internal fraud. Well, 40% of internal fraud in all businesses and organizations are found by employee, anonymous, and vendor tips. You know, if you need to have good open lines of communications for your HR department or to the CEO or to someone who says, I don't think, you know, Jack went out and bought or went to eat and didn't get a receipt, and they, you know, we're going to pay him anyway, type things. You need an employee anonymous vendor tips. You need to have good open communications, because that's where most of the internal fraud is. And again, we're trying to break the cycle so that if they know that people will have oversight on it, they won't take that first step in doing something illegal. Management reviews, that's logical. Internal audit, fine. Accountant reconciliation. But look at this. 4% is the external auditor. The external auditor coming in is really a way to go through your books and do a high-level review that all of the procedures are being done correctly. True fraud, in my opinion, comes from the first part where you can find it with the employee anonymous and vendor tips. Protect yourself with the rule of two. Let's go back to the keys to the kingdom. If you have someone who writes the purchase orders and someone who also writes the checks, you are ripe for fraud. So separate, make sure the president of the organization or a board of director does one or the other. Usually that would be signing the checks versus the POs. But you want to be sure that someone, that separation of duties is there, and that will help break your cycle. And that is the most basic of all the things. And I know there's some auditors in here, so at the end, speak up if you've got opinions as we talk through all this. I'm doing a pretty high level because I'm going to get you to the case that I got in on and how it happened and why it happened. And why I hope you never ever have to go through this again. But ultimately, to me, it was a good thing. It was a hot lotto case. A rather large gentleman walks into a convenience store in 2010. He has a $50 bill, and he picks up a hot lotto ticket. So they're like a hot lotto ticket. He was good. He had a play slip, so he wanted to use certain numbers as he did that. What he didn't know was it was his unlucky day. Some days you're lucky, some days you're not. So it's not a lucky day because he walked into a convenience store that sold a ticket where it was in a state that required that the person who buys the ticket has to be identified. He was unlucky that day because in that store, there are 2,400 convenience stores in Iowa, by the way. There are only 4 that have both video and audio This was in 2010. Today, you just will assume that you got both video and audio whenever you walk into any convenience store, or most any store around here, probably in here too. But this store had audio and video. He didn't know. And the third thing is, 400 pounds, he was a little hungry. I want a couple hot dogs. Bought a couple hot dogs. Those three things set into motion the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history and our chance to solve that case. So he picks up the ticket, heads for Texas. He was working in Iowa, headed to Texas, gave it to a friend, said, hey, I don't know whether this one or not, so, good luck, have a good day. It was a hot lotto ticket. That jackpot was $16.5 million. Gave it to his friend looked at it, lo and behold, it hits a week later. $16.5 million. Gives it to his lawyer. Says, hey, can you help me get this cash? You have a friend who gave it to me, but I want to get everything set up. Lawyer says, well, let me see. Gives it to a lawyer in New York, who sends it to a lawyer in Canada. Oh, wait a minute, Canada. A retired lawyer in Canada. That took about 8 to 10 months. Well, in Iowa, you have 12 months to cash a lottery ticket by law. So, of course, we're on after 2 weeks. Most people don't come in the next day to cash a lottery ticket. Most people wait and talk to a lawyer and an accountant. That's very logical, because you want to have all your taxes set up and anything that can help you keep as much money as you can. So we started barking about 2 weeks later. Hey, we had a winner, check your tickets. No response. 3 months. Hey, had a winner, check your tickets. No response. 6 months, same thing. Then we started getting calls. Yeah, this is, I think my husband's in the mafia. He drives a truck, and he's been gone for 3 months. I know he stops at that Quick Trip, so I think he won. So if he gets it, I get half of it because I'm married. We start getting all these, and people are hiring lawyers now saying, a clerk stole the ticket. Well, when you buy a lottery ticket, it is one of the most secure things you could ever buy, because every time you touch a machine, it registers that ticket has touched that machine. So we knew no one had scanned it to see if it had won. No one had checked it, any ticket. And if you do, you're immediately on camera again in another deal, checking it. We pretty much know most of the information. Plus, we go out and get the video on all large purchases, so we have that. So we pretty much know what you look like when you walk in the door if you've won $1 million, $500,000 before. Still no one came in. Still no one came in. All of a sudden, one day out of the blue, and this is as you're talking fraud, kind of an important point. We got a call in November. This is 11 months in, 11 out of the 12 months that this ticket has to be claimed. Got a call that came into our front desk. You've heard the expression, you see something, say something. This was Cassie who answered the phone. This gentleman said, hey, I'm a lawyer, I'm in Canada. I have that winning ticket you guys have. Okay, yeah, well, I'm old, I can't get around, I can't travel, so I'm just going to send you the ticket. You send me the $16.5 million. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, right, buddy. You think we're that stupid? Oh, no, I haven't. He gave her some numbers, and we kind of realized he either has it or he has a duplicate or something. So this is the closest anybody's come with all the number of people who's in. So she gives it to the public relations person who calls in the head of security. And they decide to talk to him on the phone. He said, yeah, I have. Oh, really? Did you buy it? Yeah, I bought it. Came through Des Moines, had some folks. Really? And Mary, the chief information officer, what were you wearing? I said, well, I was wearing my tweed pants and a nice sports coat. And that's what, we knew it was at least a 300 or 400 pound guy in a black hoodie, covering his face, to buy the ticket. And our chief security folks said, let's call the DCI and the Attorney General's office. We got a fraud here. If you see something, say something. If that front desk person would just say, well, just come on in when you're on, we'll figure it out. It might have gotten paid. No, she said, this just doesn't smell right. Well, he hung up, we called the DCI, then he called back and said, hey, I have to tell you, I told a little fib. He now admitted fraud. So now we really have the DCI and the Attorney General's office with us. And he says, it's a client, they don't want much publicity. I don't care if you're Bill Gates. If you're going to take $16.5 million if you want $16.5 million. I don't want the publicity, so we're just going to, I don't know whether we want it. Thanks, goodbye. But he decided to arrest him as soon as he showed up. Well, he didn't show up. And in fact, 3 weeks later, day before the ticket was to expire, we get a call from local lawyers that said, hey, we represent a lawyer in New York, the ticket's coming our way, we're coming in tomorrow. They show up an hour and a half before the ticket was to expire. And doesn't that stink? What is going on here? They show up, we put everybody together, and we say, we immediately call a press conference. We put the 2 lawyers with us that brought the ticket in, which was the dumbest thing they've ever done, because now they're on international television, because they were like 4 lawyers down. They had no idea what was going on. This was illegal, it was organized crime, all of it. And I said, we have the ticket. Now, if you ever have a major crime, realize that, I just said, we need something visual, so I held up the ticket, not realizing now I have my fingerprints on it. I hear this, all of the cameras zooming in on the ticket. Now, everybody has all of the security information that only that's on the ticket that they can do in high definition, by the way, that has the serial number and where the ticket was bought and how many, so all the information that we could discount when people said, I bought the ticket. They now call back and say, hey, I remember what the serial number was. Yeah, right. So we went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and finally, 3 weeks later, after talking to the lawyer from New York, finally came in. We interviewed him, all that sort of thing. They left, and then he called. Well, here's how it was reported on Channel 8.
News for you tonight, big developments to report regarding the Hot Lotto jackpot claim.
That's right, Patrick Bell has just returned from the Iowa Lottery headquarters, and Patrick, it's hard to believe, but this has gotten even more bizarre.
Oh, absolutely. It's really difficult to find an adequate adjective to describe what happened a short time ago, Mark and Kevin. You see, just after 6 o'clock this evening, lottery officials received confirmation that the claim for the Hot Lotto jackpot was being withdrawn. And that means someone has, in essence, just walked away from millions of dollars.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Hot Lotto jackpot claim has been withdrawn.
And that stunning news, delivered by Iowa Lottery Chief Executive Officer Terry Rich, means that someone has just walked away from a multi-million-dollar payment.
It's been one of the strangest lottery claims that we've had in the 26-year history of the Iowa Lottery.
The winning ticket was presented in December, but on Wednesday, seemingly out of the blue, lottery officials received this letter from a Des Moines law firm specifying if the jackpot were to be paid to the claimant, all of the winnings would be donated to charity. But lottery lawyers declined based on concerns about the legality of the purchase, possession, and presentation of the ticket.
We couldn't verify the winner. That's the bottom line. We could verify the winner, we could be claiming it, or we could be saying, you know, there is or there isn't. We don't know.
Then at 6:05 Thursday evening, the lottery received yet another letter, this time from attorney Crawford Shaw, who represents the claimant, Hexam Investment Trusts, a corporation based in Central America. In it, Shaw writes, the purchaser of the ticket has elected to remain anonymous and withdraw the claim. And if they all that person had to do was provide details such as their birth date and address, they walked away with millions of dollars.
If in fact, Mr. Shaw as a trustee could provide the information, we were ready to write the check tomorrow by 3 o'clock. I think this, for our chapter, it brings to a close a very interesting and unique situation.
So now the Division of Criminal Investigation, along with the Iowa Attorney General, now investigating whether a crime occurred here in Canada.
All right, Patrick, so we've heard a lot of comment online. One of the biggest questions is what happens to this jackpot?
And that's a good question. Lottery officials say the $10.7 million will now be returned to the Multi-State Lottery Commission, and Iowa will get roughly $1.3 million back. Confused? Well, not alone tonight.
Just another unclaimed
Okay,
ticket.
good. It's done.
A couple other things that are kind of interesting in this deal. You've heard 3 different numbers: 16.5 million, 14.5 million, 10.3 million. When you win the Powerball, you'll hear the big number first. It's this jackpot, estimated jackpot, $233 million. That's annuitized over 20 or 30 years. So at the time that this was granted, and Hot Lotto is a 25 states participate in Hot Lotto, where Powerball is like 45. So Hot Lotto was a game that annuitized 16.5, but a year later, when it was claimed, interest rates went down, so it was 14.5 million. But you'll always hear the actual cash that it takes to get whatever that jackpot was. Never changed, that was about $10.5 million in cash he took in cash settlement. So he just gives it up, goodbye. Well, this is still an Iowa story. This is still a little bit of a story, but you heard us our checks and balances, that we require him to have that in our, having written checks and balances, written policies on procedures, on helping create fraud, gives you background for employees and people who have thinking about taking, our customers that may be taking advantage of you, to have those written policies and procedures are so important. By having those, we could deny. By having those, we got the money back, we split the money up, and gave it away that summer at the state fair. I think, ironically, a cop won the $1 million that we got back. And we kind of went our way. It was a fun story. We giggled. This will make a great documentary someday. Jesus, I wonder what happened. This is an Iowa story. But at the same time, because it was getting so much publicity, all my counterparts, all the other lottery directors said, wait a minute, you're messing with our $80 billion. You better be right. Don't you dare screw this up. $80 billion, that's how we got the $80 billion. We all go to a good cause, whether it's education in Iowa, goes back to the general fund, but it all is money for the state. And, they thought that we were using it as a publicity deal just to have fun with it and all that sort of thing. And so you're messing with our money if you don't handle this right. So we kind of forgot about it. The DCI continued to investigate. They knew they had somebody where? In New York, the guy that brought the check, ultimately, who would give it to someone in Canada. But the real interesting piece was when they brought in the trust they were going to have it given to, it was based in Belize. Ding, ding, ding. Belize, that's where more fraud corporations, people for tax evasion. And when you looked at it and took a look at it, the president of the corporation was the guy in Canada for the guy in New York that brought in the tickets. So we knew those were tied. So here's something I hope you're never asked. The DCI, this is a little secret. If you're at the DCI, walk into your room and think about what you're going to say. The DCI went to Canada, finally got in Royal Mounted Canadian Police. We only had 3.5 years, I think, to investigate this deal, or just go away. It could have raised, no one had ever heard about it, and things would continue. They finally got the guy that said, I'll talk to you in Canada, and the guy in New York said, okay, I'll talk to you. They both said, we got it, and the first question asked is, do you want to be the defendant, or do you want to be the witness? Both of them wanted to be the witness. I couldn't believe it. No one wants to go to jail. So they said, yeah, we got it from someone in Houston, Texas, a lawyer in Houston, Texas. Now we're down another layer of lawyers who had a client, and they ultimately named the client as a gentleman named Robert Rhodes. But we had no connection. Again, this is an Iowa deal. Somebody bought it in Iowa. Okay, why wouldn't this Robert Rhodes want to cash in? But they could never, every time they went to Houston to interview Robert Rhodes, he was gone. So it went on and on, looked like it was going to die. Now we're about 5 months away from the statute of limitations running out. It's been over, been a fun story to begin with, mystery story, all those fun things with true crime. And Tom Miller, who was the prosecutor for the Attorney General's office leading the investigation, decided to retire. And so he took the case and he threw it on the desk of a young guy named Rob Sand. Now, anybody know who Rob Sand is? State auditor, right? Rob was at the Attorney General's office and he had done white collar crime, and he decided to, they threw on a desk to take this, so he took it, and we looked completely through it. We checked all the information. The only thing we hadn't released was the video, remember the video, and audio from the convenience store. So he said, this is our last chance, let's go ahead and release it. Now, why wouldn't you release that video right out of the chute? Well, that video gives you so much information for someone who wanted to come in and claim the ticket without the ticket, because they'll see what he presents and the money, all these sort of things. If a lady calls, you'll see this isn't a lady, so you can just say, no, I'm sorry, thanks. So it helped us to verify when someone was falsely trying to create a claim. He said, let's release the video. 3 months out. Well, here's how it was reported. You can actually see the video.
To an exclusive story we first brought you Wednesday at 10. Iowa DCI releasing never-before-seen surveillance video in that Hot Lotto.
Investigators believe the man who bought that winning ticket has information about a fraudulent attempt to claim the multi-million-dollar prize.
KTTI Ryan Smith is live with the latest.
That's right. DCI investigators tell me that this case has brought in more than 100 false claims for that winning ticket, which was purchased at this Quick Trip nearly 4 years ago. And in a news conference today, investigators tell me they are now pursuing additional stronger leads in the Houston, Texas area.
The transaction begins like any other at this Metro Quick Trip. A drink and 2 hot dogs. But the customer here isn't finished. Listen closely. This is the start of what will become one of the biggest lottery mysteries in the country. The man in the black coat won a hot lotto ticket worth $14 million. Problem is, after nearly 4 years, no one knows who he is.
To me, it looks like any one of us walking into a convenience store and buying a lottery ticket.
It's a bizarre case that has puzzled investigators. That's why Iowa DCI released this surveillance video from December 23rd, 2010, in hopes the public can help identify the mystery man. The customer never claimed his winnings. Instead, an attorney named Crawford Shaw stepped up in the final hour of the ticket's expiration, representing a trust called Hexam Investments, based in Belize. Crawford ultimately admitted he didn't know the ticket purchaser's identity, and today the search continues.
First, a fraud was perpetrated when someone attempted to redeem the ticket fraudulently. They didn't, from what we know at this point, they didn't have a lawful claim to that jackpot and intended to claim it anyway.
So the mystery man who walked out of these doors nearly 4 years ago with that winning ticket has yet to be heard from. That's why DCI set up an online survey for anyone who sent in tips or anonymous information regarding the man in the video you just saw. You can find that link on our website. That's KTTI.com. For now, we're live in Des Moines. Ryan Smith, KTTI 8 News, Iowa's news leader.
So I learned a couple things. Remember I talked about don't show evidence when all the cameras are there, because they're hiding up cameras out there. In this, DCI very rarely allows, we were a state agency, so I said, we want to be up at the press conference. You're doing a press conference, we're going to stand in front of you, because us standing beside them and talking, it said that we weren't implicated. We weren't the ones that did this fraud. We're out looking for it. We're doing everything we can. Every time we had a news conference, we sold more lottery tickets. I don't know whether it's because we got one, or maybe they're checking, they're following up on this, so this must be more legit than I thought, or whatever the feelings were. So standing with the DCI, or standing up if you had fraud with them and saying something rather than no comment, in my opinion, is a really positive thing, because it shows that you're going after it, it's not your part of it. Unless you're part of it, then of course, you're not standing up. So guess what? Remember how we talked about who finds internal fraud? It wasn't the audit per year. It was people started calling in. When we released the video and we started getting anonymous tips, we had a tip hotline. Who was it? We started getting calls. We got about 25. And one of those was, hey, and remember this, everything's just Iowa still. I mean, this is just an Iowa problem, right? It happened in Iowa. You guys are betting. You guys are on TV. All the other states said, leave us alone. Just don't do anything. In fact, we had a couple states that just pay it. You just pay it. They have the ticket. They get the money. Someone called and said, hey, that's Eddie Tipton. Who's Eddie Tipton? Eddie Tipton was an employee of the Multi-State Lottery. Now, the Multi-State Lottery is the organization that, as Iowa, all of the states across the U.S., we formed this organization, Multi-State Lottery. We're all on the board of directors. There are 34 board of directors, but it's a little small organization based in Urbandale, Iowa, who take the money in for Powerball and then send it back out depending on who wins. So if the jackpot's in New Jersey, they send it back out to them. So they transact $4 or $5 billion a year in rate. An employee of that organization is Eddie Tipton, who was hired in 2003 as their chief security officer. And when I heard, hey, I think that's Eddie Tipton. So these aren't employees of the Iowa Lottery. They're employees of the Multi-State Lottery. I think that's Eddie Tipton. Eddie Tipton, oh my God, he works for the Multi-State Lottery. He has access and did the programming for the computer to draw the numbers. Now, Powerball's drawn with balls. This game's drawn with computers. And they said, let's just start doing them by computers. Let's program the computers, and then we have less people that have to be there for the draws and put it together. So we had all the ding, ding, dings all the way together. Now, if it's Eddie Tipton, we start thinking, how does that relate to Robert Rhodes? My attorney, or our attorney at the Iowa Lottery, obviously gets on Google. And here's a little story. If there's one thing you remember, here's another one you want to write down is tell your kids, tell your grandkids, tell your wife, tell anybody you can tell. If you're going to do something illegal, don't put it on social media. And if you're going to do illegal with somebody else, don't have them as your friend on social media so we can find them. Our attorney just got on and said, hey, did you know that Eddie Tipton's Facebook is wide open and it shows his work history? That he had worked before the multi-state lottery at a place called Systems Evolutions Inc. as the COO. Well, guess who was the CEO of that organization? Robert Rhodes, the guy that we had tracked down to Texas that we knew had the ticket. Ding, ding, ding. We put them together, called the DCI. DCI went to both of them, said we got a problem, talked to them. And here's the second thing is, if you're going to do something illegal, don't use your cell phone, shut it off. Shut off your computer, because they could go back almost 4 years and follow Eddie's where he was standing and knew that he was talking to Robert Rhodes the day of all this stuff was going on. So ultimately, they charged Eddie Tipton first with fraud, Robert Rhodes second with fraud, and take him to court. All circumstantial evidence. Eddie had access to the computer through the machines. He maintained the machines. He wrote the code. Checks and balances, shouldn't we have those all separated? He wrote the code. He maintained them. He was part of that organization. He must have done it. And so they charged Eddie Tipton, arrested him on January 15th following year. Later arrested Robert Rhodes. And in July, 6 months later, moving pretty fast, here's Eddie and his lawyer. They're at their trial. Rob Sand, phenomenal job in taking circumstantial evidence. We had no smoking gun. We had no idea how he did it, but he must have done it to be able to do this. And again, we're only talking Iowa here. This is just Iowa, so we're getting all this international press with this big jackpot caper. All the other states are still upset. Why are you going to bring this up? You know, we don't want to lose money on this. You're gambling another $80 million. Eddie's found guilty in an hour and a half of circumstantial evidence. Well done, Rob Sand. One of them was overturned in the Supreme Court for some technicality, but down the road. But Eddie was found guilty. But here's where it starts to get interesting. It's now Iowa. It should be over. It should be done. We had a good laugh. It wasn't that big a deal, really, was it? And that's just lottery money. It's prize money, big deal. You know, that's what people were saying to us. We're saying, no, we got to keep the integrity of our game going. So we talked about how a lotto ticket and Bigfoot are part of it. Now let's get to the 2 hot dogs. It's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. You see, Eddie bought 2 hot dogs in addition to the lottery ticket when he there. If he hadn't bought those, this story would be over. Nothing would have happened. But he bought the 2 hot dogs, and after the trial, first trial, they asked him to bring up some character witnesses. So he brought up his brother. His brother was a justice of the peace, a peace officer, and well-respected guy in a local town in Plano, not Plano, Platino, Texas. I mean, a real small town. Justice of the peace. Cowboy hat. He came up and got on the stand to testify for his brother. The dumbest thing anyone could have done. Here's how it's reported.
Eddie's younger brother, Tommy Tipton, a Texas justice of the peace and reserve cop, took the stand as a character witness for his brother. Tommy claimed his brother was with him and his family the day the ticket was purchased. But it was what he said next that would send ripples through the defense's case and garner unwanted attention.
One of the things that he testified about on the stand was that couldn't have been my brother in the footage because Eddie doesn't even like hot dogs.
The person in the video also is buying hot dogs, and he's not a hot dog guy.
The statement caught the eye of an FBI agent, who recognized Tommy's name.
We got reported back in his hometown in Texas. And in that's when the FBI agent looked at us and said, wait a minute, that's the guy we looked at for money laundering, who said that he won the Colorado lottery.
What? Wait a minute. Let's think about this. His brother comes up and testifying for him. He says something about 2 hot dogs. My brother don't like hot dogs, and everybody's head goes, shh. right to Eddie, a 400-pound dude, he don't like hot dogs. But the only person that really could report something like that, be politically correct, was the UPI reporter that was there, or the Associated Press reporter that was there. Stuck it on the national wires. It went all the way back to Fortonio, Texas, I believe is how it's pronounced. At Tommy's hometown, local paper picked it up, and an FBI said, "Oh, I recognize that guy." 10 years ago, investigating, he had all these sequential bills that he claimed he told us that he won the lottery in Colorado. He was in the hospital under a morphine, and he told us he won the lottery. So he called up and said, "Hey, you probably should check his brother too." And as soon as we did that, it became a national case. What we did was, back to, if you're going to do anything illegal, don't use your cell phone, don't use any of your social media. They basically went back and looked at every conversation on their cell phones, took all of their contacts, sent them to us. We called all the states and said, "Give us all your winners $600 and above," and immediately found 4 major jackpots for people that were in their contact list and or on their their social media friends. And immediately said, "Wait a minute, this guy's involved too." And all of a sudden, we had a national case. We had all of these jackpots that we were now investigating and charging. And as soon as we started getting hits, the national media stepped in. Here's how it went.
It's the lottery scandal shocking America. 52-year-old Eddie Tipton, a former lottery official, has been sentenced to 10 years in prison for rigging a $14 million lottery jackpot in Iowa. Remember the movie Lucky Numbers? The 2000 comedy about rigging a lottery starred John Travolta and Lisa Kudrow. But there was nothing funny about this real ripoff. The case was broken when surveillance video was released showing a customer buying the $14 million winning ticket in a convenience store in Des Moines in 2010. Notice how he's got a hood over his head. Was he concealing his identity? Turns out that was Eddie Tipton, who at the time was director of security for the state lottery. Here's his ticket with the winning numbers: 3, 12, 16, 26, 33. Prosecutors say he hacked into the lottery's computers, making it pick those numbers.
He somehow manipulated the program so that he could predict the numbers that would be drawn, and then he bought tickets that would match those numbers.
Tipton was sentenced last month to 10 years in prison. Leaving court pending appeal, he said he was stunned by the sentence.
Shock. That's it.
But now prosecutors say Tipton used his insider's knowledge to rig a lottery drawing in Colorado in 2005. Guess who won $569,000? His brother, Tommy Tipton, a justice of the peace in Texas. And get this, a lifelong friend of Eddie Tipton won a $783,000 megabucks payout in Wisconsin in 2007. He was identified as Robert Rhodes. Iowa, Colorado, Wisconsin, a triangle of suspected lottery scams in America's heartland.
I didn't even think that was possible.
Me either. And you'll notice the national press, and I don't know whether it's because they called other states and said that's an Iowa problem. Often said it was the state, he was an employee of the state, so we were working really hard to say, wait, they don't work for us. Because we wanted people to know that we were the ones that caught them and we had the oversight. That's why we stood behind the DCI. That's why we worked really hard to say, I don't care what it takes. And let me tell you, I'm so proud to be part of living in Iowa versus Illinois or another state. Because our governor, Branstad at the time, Reynolds after that, kept saying to me, I don't care what it costs, go after this deal and get it straightened out, because I put the lottery in here and said it's got to be fair and honest no matter what. So I spent all the money for all the investigation the lottery did, and ultimately paid back, because we had the biggest shares ever, and probably 10 times paid back with between all the lists and everything else, because people believe that if we caught it and we're busting it, we're watching it. That was so important. But it would not have happened, in my opinion, if I'd have been in another state and had a different governor. And part of the reason was because our coffers were a little bit flush, rather than in some states where they would take any money no matter what. If you're messing with big dollars that the lottery brings, you're hurting other things, so, just move on. So again, I give great credit to our elected officials, which was my belief too. I wouldn't want to do it any other way, to keep going after this until we found it. So here's the big ones we ultimately found. And it's amazing, we say, Rob Sand was huge in getting the first prosecution. They immediately started charging Eddie, but we had a whole team, probably 10 or 15 people had little pieces of this to make it work. We found one thing, and so we found one. This was found by our new security head, our security chief, after 5 years, retired, no problem. So the new one came in, and he worked for the West Des Moines Police Department. He did a lot of murders and serial murders. He said, well, I want to see it on a map. So we went to our graphics department and said, hey, show us a map of what this was and see if it tells us anything. So we got the map, and the first thing the security guy says, oh, look at that, look at those stars in the middle. This is the I-35 bandit. This group was going up and down I-35 collecting tickets in those states on I-35. And then the attorney said, well, wait a minute, look at the dates. I mean, there are 2003, 5, 7, all these different dates. But the actual date of the year is the same. Eddie Tipton worked for the Multi-State Lottery, programmed over 50 computers across the U.S. For local state games, but this one was a regional national game. The computers that he drew the numbers, he had 3 or 4 years before we caught up that it might be him and yanked him out. And he went in and we started doing the investigation and said, boss, these computers are old, we better update them. So let me go and do that. Then we better wipe the old ones, of course. So he wiped the old ones. So we didn't have a computer, we didn't have a smoking gun of what was going on. And once Wisconsin got involved, we had ex-CIA and FBI looking at any computer we could find that was still put in evidence after they took it out of service. But Eddie didn't make it into the evidence room in Wisconsin. We didn't have a computer in Iowa that we were using locally. We only did this with national. So the guy in Wisconsin they hired FBI, CIA, they looked through it. They spent 2 weeks, couldn't find anything. We saw this and started looking at November 23rd, December 20th, same dates. We said, look and see if we can find these dates anywhere in the code. 2 hours later, we get a call. We found it. We found the key. Here's the magic sauce of how Eddie Tipton created the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history. What was in the malicious code that he programmed? Now, remember, keys to the kingdom. Eddie wrote the program. He oversaw the security of the program. He maintained the computer of the program. So he wrote and compiled it. And that's where things got screwy. He wrote malicious code that would trigger only on 3 specific dates. You saw 2 of those. It was November, a December date, and a May date. Why did he pick those dates? He wanted to make it confusing. It wasn't like it was just the same time all the time, or he could predict any time. And only if something would kick in if one of these 3 days came in, and those were the dates that he would go on vacation back to his home in Texas. He wouldn't be in Iowa anywhere near the computer when it was drawn, so no one ever suspected it was him. Had to be on a Wednesday or Saturday, that's when most of the big jackpot draws were. Had to be after 8 p.m. Central Time, very specific. And had to be on one of the ones that he actually programmed. That's the magic sauce he did. If those occurred, then he could narrow the possibilities down to 200. So he physically had a second computer beside him with the same program that he would run for that day, 1 day a year, write down all the numbers, 200 numbers, then give them to Robert Rhodes or give them to his brother, and then ultimately did one for himself to buy those tickets to predict the random outcome. Once all of that happened, we had the magic sauce. We had the smoking gun. So they're all recharged. They all went back to the 3 guys. Guess what they said? You want to be the victim? Or do you want to be the witness, or you want to be the defendant? First person to flip, Robert Rhodes. He says, I'm out. He was my good friend, but I'm out. He'd lost a couple million in some big SEC scam, so he had the need. Remember, he had a financial need. Eddie had the opportunity, and they both rationalized. Poor guy, he lost a couple million, probably done a bad deal, so we'll help him out. He signed the proffer saying this is the way it occurred, and got a better sentence. He got a reduced sentence to, in the process. Then they went to Eddie and Eddie's brother Tommy and said, we got you. They talked between themselves. Tommy says, I got kids, Eddie, you got me into this deal. And they said, okay, so they both did deals, and Tommy agreed to confess. They both agreed to tell us and confirm how it was done. If there was any more, we truly believe we have everything out of the system, so, and across the U.S. if nothing else could happen. So they both found, so we got guilty pleas, and Eddie got up to 25 years, but in Iowa, if you have good behavior, he's been down in Florinda since day one. He is up for parole this fall, already in 4 to 5 years. And that'll take care of all these sentences. Everybody had to pay restitution. Iowa did not get a dime out of this deal from anybody because we didn't pay it. So they said, even though you spent all the money to investigate it, you don't get any money. But we made the money on reputation, no doubt about it. And reputation is everything. So that's the $80 million gamble. The lotto ticket, that took us all the way to the point of the trial of Eddie. We thought it was an Iowa deal. Turned national once the 2 hot dogs came up, and Tommy, why he came up to testify. I mean, there's so many crazy things of how this got to the point. But once he testified, the 2 hot dogs got him in trouble and made it a national case. But how did Bigfoot enter in helping solve the largest lottery fraud? I don't care, anytime you're involved in a scandal of some sort or a fraud or whatever, and you think you'll never get out of it, there's always something even crazier as you know that could happen. Tommy was a Bigfoot hunter. And part of the way that he got tripped up and Bigfoot helped us solve this case was the very first one he did in Colorado was a gentleman named Alexander Hicks. Alexander Hicks was Bigfoot hunting with Tommy. And Tommy said, hey, I won this lottery ticket, and it's out in Colorado, it was a state game. You get a cash, I'll give you 10%. He said, hey, I can't do that. Tom said, let's keep it on the down low. I like it in cash because my portion of cash, because I'm not divorced my wife. I hate her. So he sends it out with Hicks. Hicks cashes it, brings it back, gives him 90% of the money in a suitcase, briefcase, in sequential bills. Tommy gets nervous. He's thinking, I gotta do something here. He looks up, there's a fireworks dealer. He says, boy, they do a lot of business with $100 bills. So he went over and said, hey, if you don't mind, can I exchange some $100 bills with you? Just, whatever he told me. Well, the fireworks dealer got nervous and contacted the FBI. This is so the FBI goes and talks to Tommy. Well, guess what? Tommy's been Bigfoot hunting. He fell out of a tree and was in the hospital. Broken back and a little concussion, I suppose. So he's laying there under a morphine drip, and the FBI's interviewing him. He said, hey, I want a lottery in Colorado. My friend, Alexander Hicks. FBI investigated, I got you one. Okay, thanks. And they forgot all about it. It was 10 years later that Tommy went up on the stand and was identified through all this newspaper reporting that they got when it's all said and done. Now, if it worked once, why not do it again? The last one that they did was one in Oklahoma. And the one in Oklahoma were also 2 Bigfoot hunters. They were, and listen to this, their last name was Kahn. C-O-N-N. The Kahn brothers. Now, how can you make this up? Rich. My last name's Rich with the lottery. Kahn. I mean, we had them all. And we had the money was an old girlfriend of Eddie's that helped claim the Kansas. So Bigfoot was there. If Bigfoot hadn't existed, we probably wouldn't have got all the leads with the FBI and everything back when it's all said and done. So the big guy really helped us out solving the largest lottery fraud in this history. Yes, we were good. Okay, let's go back to the lessons. That's where we started. The first lesson is we have success. And I often find small businesses where you're a one-person shop, where you're the owner, the entrepreneur, you're making all the money, and you've got employees. They often, you often get folks who believe that, I was due when it's all said and done. Success often brings sometimes resentment from employees who feel they aren't treated correctly, that sort of thing. If you're ever thinking about doing a crime, I'm telling you, the technology and what the police and DCI can do today, you're going to get caught at something. They claim they only catch dumb criminals, but I think anymore you get about anybody with the technology you have. Let's talk about the lessons. The 3 key elements and how they related to this case. because again, I went through this. I love doing promotion. You can tell with the Zoom. I love marketing. I love promotion. I do not love this as a manager or president of a company. So the things that I've learned, the financial need is a big factor, and it isn't when you're employing somebody, they have a financial need, they want a new house, and they're trying to better themselves, no doubt about it. It's when the kids go to college and they overspend, they take mom and dad's credit card and take it out, or bad economy, somebody loses a job, and they're in, again, gambling, drinking, divorce is a big one, when somebody needs money and I need it now. But they have to have the opportunity. That opportunity is they have all the keys to the kingdom. And the most basic is I write the purchase orders and I pay the bills. No one sees anything. I handle all the money in an organization. So make sure you are dividing up the financial responsibilities of who can approve and not approve in that case. Who's finding it? Encourage all employees to do your yearly meetings. Hey, if anybody, something doesn't feel right, come talk to us. Got an HR. It's tough for them to come into the boss and say something because they may, the boss might think that I'm mad because you and I have had 2 or 3 fights in the office and I'm just trying to get you fired, kind of thing. Have somebody so you can at least investigate, keep it confidential, take a look at it. Vendors have been big in hearing, I had to pay, so why am I, I'm having to buy lobster dinners for employee XYZ, this doesn't feel right. Management reviews, internal audit, and know the external audit is really, really important. Really, really important to have as a big oversight. They will find things, and once you find something, especially if you're a government organization, Rob Sands audit group down in Des Moines can come up and look, and they are dog good. Most people are scared of it. I invited them in every week and said, help me, because I want you to find out, I want to solve any problems I have today. I don't want to say this has been going on for the years that I've been in charge. And protect yourself with the rule of 2. Have 2 people approve for everything. That's a big deal, especially in small organizations. What was the impact? Okay, so I talked $80 billion. Everybody's scared. You're blowing our money. If you screw this thing up, you're costing us bucks. What was the impact when it was all said and done? First off, I lost a ton of friends. My best friends who kept saying, my background is media. You're just a media hog. In fact, Eddie in his final deal said Terry Rich was an absolute media hog. But that's the only thing I know of how to get the word out to ask, and utilizing and working with the media and telling them this thing's happening is what ultimately solved it. Was all said and done. But I got praise from a few. It was probably a 50-50, and I lost a lot of good friends on it. If you are an accountant today, those of you that are the checks and balances, a lawyer, an accountant, the people that have to say no in a meeting because policies and the law doesn't allow us to do that, it isn't a good feeling. You have to blow the whistle. It's not fun. So those of you that are CEOs, say thank you to those folks because they're just as important as the folks who are out selling. That's the balance that you have. Sales. We had more sales than ever in the history of I think I came in, it was the year that the first theft happened. We were probably making, I want to say 58, 60 million. The year I left, we made 92, and I think they're going to bust $100 million in profits this year with the Iowa audit. So it worked in that we protected our integrity, and because of all the publicity, we sold more. People, I better go buy a lottery ticket. What's going on there? Compliance management. It made us open our eyes each year to review, which is not I hate detail, to review all of our policies and procedures and things and the checks and balances. Having it in writing when somebody is hired that if you steal, you will be fired and you may be prosecuted is a big deal. That will stick with an employee. If you don't have it in writing, they don't have that little devil on the shoulder saying, hey, you better not do that. Remember that scared me when I first came to work, they're going to fire me. People are watching. Checks and balances we talked about. And here's the one few of you will ever get if you have a major disaster, that's closure. Why is that? Because when things like this happen, most companies like to sweep it under the rug. Let's just fire them, hell out of here, take a little something if they have to, goodbye. Some will do that. It's tough to prosecute, you don't want to ruin your reputation, and should do that. And so if you do prosecute, there are deals all the way up the ladder that we could have cut, that we did cut. But ultimately, when it was all said and done, it often goes clear to the Supreme Court. You're talking, this took us what, 6, 7 years? You don't get that closure. I was thinking, geez, did we really do the right thing? Do we really have this together? What if a technicality after all this time does it? And this is what closure looks like, gang. Eddie tipped him with handcuffs, and because he was so big, they had to use 2 full sets of handcuffs to get him out. And I know that we were right in what we did, and the hard work that we did actually worked. Now, would I play the lottery today? Heck yes, I'm playing. I don't work for the lottery anymore. Guess what I won? $12. I got to the casino last night. I won in the lottery. And I play Powerball. It's big. I buy a ticket now and then, or some other one. So, yeah, I would definitely play. There's been probably six frauds against lotteries in the world with billions and billions of draws that happened in the history of the lottery. There was one that you saw in Pennsylvania where somebody put latex paint on the inside of a ping pong ball. And so all the balls with the 2s and 4s had that paint, so just the 2s and 4s, but the mafia or the organized crime saw that because they were using the same numbers for their deals. And so that got busted. That was an internal deal. One in Milan where they drew balls, used heavy balls, you know, it seemed like, and they had kids drawing it, and that seems logical, except they were using nephews and nieces once in a while. And they either shaved the balls, or they put them in an oven, or put them in a freezer. They blindfolded the kids and said, hey, pick the cold ones or pick the hot ones. They got busted. It was pretty easy too. They got away with some money. Yeah, I play. It's a safe, and if you're upset with something happens with a lottery, there's a lottery office you can go to, or a lottery rep that you'll see out in your C-stores. And you got the governor and your state representatives. Here's the deal. You all have been successful. You have days. You know, remember, we all have a few failures, all a few successes. But all in all, it's really easy when things are going well. Good leadership is easy in good times. Great, successful leadership is judged by what happens in bad times. You've all been through COVID now. We still have some more to go, it seems like. You learn and you move ahead. Failure is the first step to success. Just move ahead. But the big thing is have the organization around you, which you have here with this. I can tell it in your eyes. And it's a whole, I've been to a lot of organizations where there's been a lot more downheads and not the smiles. And you know, you've had some successes. Keep up the good work as you look for Kossuth and Palo Alto County. An $80 billion gamble. A lotto ticket, 2 hot dogs, and Bigfoot helped solve the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. We have 2 books. One is the idea book that talks a lot about generating ideas, how to do it. The other one is that. And when Maureen and I talked, she said, would you bring some books? People sometimes like it. I'm happy to do that. They're, I think, $17.95 each. We're going to do $15 for a book or $20 for both of them. If you would want them, they're signed. I'll sign anything you want in it for fun. But I'm not here to sell books. I'm here to just to educate and say, don't ever let this happen to you again. Let's see if you have any questions. I appreciate your time today. How about let's do that with the ending of the speech, then we'll do questions. Yes, sir.
You mentioned about the takeaways there, the different things with state lottery What about the other states that were asking you or telling you to just pay out?
Okay.
Did they take anything?
So were there takeaways from the multi-state lottery? Some yes, multi-state lottery, my opinion, I better not say since there's press here. I think the multi-state lottery, because I then went in and was the audit chair for the multi-state lottery after this happened, which then we changed lots of policies. Yes, they did learn. I think the biggest difference that I still have with that organization and any organization that's a government organization is I don't think you've seen any comments, but no comments from it. Why they didn't say this was an employee, we're pissed. We fired him and we are correcting it, we caught him and we're changing it. We're going to let this happen. But instead, no comment because 2 lawsuits prevailed afterwards. And both were settled out in court. One was a lawsuit by the gentleman who won the next lottery jackpot. So jackpot gets up to $10 million, somebody wins it, it goes back to $1 million, builds back up. Somebody won the next one, which was just saying $8 million. They started thinking, or a lawyer actually contacted and said, hey, Eddie didn't win that last one, you should have won 18 of them. Well, statistically, there's no way, because once you get to a certain point, you're going to have to win it. But went to court, and he got money. I think he got 1.5 million or 3 million or something, but the lawyer got 40% of it. All the craziness and the depositions in between. The second one was by the same lawyers. They added another lawyer to it, did a class action lawsuit. Everybody who played the games that you saw on the dates that happened, where you saw the jackpots in the various states, they should all get their money back for their ticket. So ultimately, that judgment was awarded, and if you had bought a ticket in 2003 and 4, you still have that ticket in 2019, you can send that ticket in and get your $2 or $3 back. And if you didn't, all you needed to do was fill out the form and write that you verify that you had X number of tickets, and you got your $2 and $5 back, up to $10 or $15 or $20. And so that one was settled, and again, the lawyers got 30-40% of all that. Those are all editorial comments. You know, that's part of the legal process, and that money is nothing to the $80 billion that the lottery takes in. The integrity was so much more important than the $4 million in that, and I think the insurance for that all worked. So the answer was, did we learn from the multi-state lottery? Yeah, the oversight is much better. Obviously, the checks and balances are being there. Nobody's programming and doing the same compiling and doing the others. They've got outside organizations watching it all the time. So, great question, thank you. Let's do one more question, 2 more questions, and we'll wrap it up. Where's the guy that hit the hole-in-one, though? We gotta congratulate him. Congratulate him. Who just hit a hole-in-one? Where's he at? Stand up! Stand up. Congratulations. And one of these things, many times as you fail, it's better to have tried and failed than do nothing at all and succeed. Sit on your butt at home. It's more fun to go golf and finally get that success, right? Yeah. See, I knew there'd be a good story to wrap up my quotes, verify my quotes. With that, I say thank you. You've got a great organization, Maureen, the entire group, Linda, the entire group. Thank you so much for all that you do for the area and what you're doing for Iowa. I'm retired now, just traveling and having the greatest time meeting folks like you and telling the story. It's a great place to live, and I think there'll be great things happening in the future. Thank you so much.
Our speaker last year at this time, and unfortunately we couldn't have it last year, so he committed to coming this year. So that is outstanding. Thank you for this phenomenal story. Thank you.
Thanks.
Another thing that I wanted to acknowledge, because I think it's really important, as he talked about, here's our future workforce. Well, all of our interns that are here today, will you please stand? All the interns, come on, up you go. And condense our program this year so we can have it as our normal program. But this was a very active group, a very engaged group, and I would have to say we had a very interesting time when we were at the country club in Bancroft with the weather. But they had a great day golfing. But here's our future workforce, and the fun part about it is, everyone, that there are many of you sitting in this room that were once an intern just like them. And we need to make sure that we work with them, we train them well, we engage them, and let them have full responsibility, because they do take off and they do a lot of great things. So thank you, interns. We hope that you're back and you will be residents of Kossuth or Palo Alto County. Two really important people that they were on the hotline this year. So when we had different things, we were constantly in conversation, either on the phone, trying to meet with each other face to face, which was a little bit interesting. But I'd like to have my 2 board presidents come up, and that was Ivan Dalen and Craig Myers, please. These two, I'm going to tell you, they were constantly in the know, really, really great presidents for the last 2 years. And they have served for 2 years, and actually, there was a few times I was calling him, and he was down in the ditches digging to make sure that all of the broadband was getting out there and being served to all the rest of you so we could all be working remotely. But please give them a very high acknowledgement, because this year was really a very busy year. Very, very busy. And they were very great presidents, and I'm very honored to have been able to work with both of these individuals. So, yes, for you to take afterwards. Thank you very much. We have new incoming presidents, and one president couldn't be here this morning, and that is Rick Brennan from the Palo Alto County Economic Development. And our new president is Jason Mortek. Jason, would you please stand? He's already, so he's just getting like a little bit of what it's going to be like. But all the rest of you, we really are appreciative of the fact that we know that it's great to be able to get out and start again. And there's so many wonderful entities that are sitting around here and partners that we work with, from the federal government side to the state government side to our regional partners. And everybody plays a major part in this. I want to just kind of acknowledge that, and it's just because I'm on the state board, but I have two very critical people that I work with all the time, and that is Stacy Dreyer and Michael Wampler. Will you two please stand? These two are very important, especially to any new startup businesses or any business that is wanting to expand on a level. But I would say during our COVID time period, these two, we really had to constantly be grabbing that information, compiling it, putting it on our website, trying to respond to people on their phones when they would call in. But we were very, very active with SBDC, and Stacy and I actually went and tried to really encourage our retail businesses to do shopiowa.com, which is another avenue to be able to provide revenue back to that business so they can keep going even though their doors were closed. So thank you, you two. I had to acknowledge you because you guys really helped a lot this last year. We also want to thank the rest of you for coming this morning and keeping committed with our organization and keeping it very vibrant, and we appreciate your questions. And thank you. Have a great day. Terry, anything else? He's going to be right out here to sign books or purchase books or...
I did forget to mention, I usually get a question, will this make a great movie? Or there's been 2 TV shows, but I think you'll see something by next year that are coming in to shoot here sometime soon on the whole deal. So we'll let you know when that all comes in. I'm thinking maybe Wilford Brimley was who they said would play me, but it would be he died. That's why we got it.